just wanted to say that for exactly 4 weeks ago, I uploaded a true crime video where I thanked all of you for 200 subscribers. And today, I'm thanking all of you for 1,000 subscribers, which is crazy. At least I hope it's 1,000 subscribers. I'm recording this on a Saturday. I'm like ahead of my recording schedule, and I'm just shy of 1,000. So I'm hoping that by Tuesday, it's gonna be 1,000. And I'm just so grateful to all of you, and I just wanted to thank you for that. A few weeks ago, I watched a video of GB ASMR where she mentioned that 2/3 of her audience is not subscribed. And with me, that's even worse. Like, I have over 7,000 unique viewers and 1,000 subscribers. So, and I get it. Like, before I had this channel, I wasn't subscribed to any ASMR artist, and I watched like 50. I wasn't subscribed to anyone on YouTube, and it wasn't until I opened this channel that I realized how important that is. And it has nothing to do with like money, because subscriber accounts don't go towards that. That's only based on views. It's a personal thing. It's like people like you enough or like your content enough to subscribe to you, and it just motivates you to keep going. So if you're one of the 6,000 who hasn't subscribed yet, please click that subscribe button and click that notification button. It means so much to me. And for all the rest of you who have subscribed, again, thank you so much. It's incredible. Today's case is wild. Like, when I was researching this case, I started off thinking one thing and I ended with thinking another thing. And honestly, it's a constant back and forth between two opinions. And it's just crazy. So, today we're going to be talking about Cindy James. So Cindy James was a 44-year-old pediatric nurse, and in June 1989, her body was found in the yard of an abandoned house in Richmond, Vancouver. She had her hands and feet tied behind her back. There was a black nylon pantyhose tied tightly around her neck, and she had morphine and other drugs in her system, and she ultimately died from the overdose. Now, police ruled it a suicide. Now, my first thought was, how the hell can they rule this a suicide? Her hands and feet are tied behind her back. And she was practically strangled, but you're gonna find out why they thought it was a suicide, and honestly, it's crazy. So, her family never believed it was a suicide because Cindy had been complaining to her family and to police about harassment for the past 6 years. So in 1981, she left her husband, and about 4 months later, I believe, she started getting like phone calls and threatening notes in the mailbox, and she started getting attacked frequently. So she tried to hide her identity. She changed her last name. She moved house. She painted her car. But it never stopped. She kept being found. She kept getting harassed. And, she was attacked several times. Now, because there were never any witnesses to these attacks, the police thought that she was making everything up. And they thought she was either lying about everything or at least withholding important information. And months before she died, she was found hypothermic in a ditch 6 miles from her home. She was cut and bruised, but she didn't remember how she ended up in the police was investigating these harassment claims, Cindy hired her own private investigator. And he said that when the police questioned her on several occasions, he noticed that she wasn't telling them the entire story. She would be evasive. She would withhold information, and she simply wasn't acting the way a victim would act. And there's a lot of, like, her sister released a book, and in that book, she talked about the different attacks that Cindy went through. And when I read this, I immediately thought, this cannot be true. This has to be just made up, because they were brutal, but so many. Like, she seemed to get attacked all the time. She was constantly getting cut and stabbed and bruised, and the black nylon pantyhose apparently were tied around her neck in every single attack. Her phone lines would regularly be cut, and the problem is that there were just never witnesses. Police ended up doing 24-hour surveillance on her house for weeks at a time when absolutely nothing would happen, and then the moment they were gone, she would get attacked. A police officer moved in with her for a month, which is strange on its own. I mean, I've never heard of a police officer moving into a victim's house, but apparently I've read some reports that they were having an affair, but I don't know if that's true. And in that month, nothing happened to her, and the moment he left, she got attacked. Now, obviously, it could be that whoever was watching her, because if it was a stalker, he was clearly watching her all the time, that he would obviously know police was there and not do anything until they were gone. But if they were, for example, just tapping her phone lines and not actually being present there, then there's no way he would have known that her phone lines were being tapped, and yet nothing happened there either. None of the threatening calls she always received happened at any time that she was being surveyed, but it always happened afterwards. So the two main theories in this case is, one, she had a stalker who harassed her for over 6 years and she was murdered. 2, she suffered from split personality disorder and she was actually doing this to herself unknowingly. Now, the problem with this case and why I find it so fascinating is that there are an equal amount of arguments to be made for each side. So, on the murder side, her body was found about 1.5 miles away from her car. She was barefooted, and her feet were extremely clean, so she barely had any dirt on them. Now, her shoes weren't found anywhere, so if she walked for a 1.5 miles on her own to commit suicide, her feet should have been dirty. Also, there were several tablets found in her stomach, but the morphine was injected, and the syringe used to inject the morphine wasn't found anywhere either. And her body also wasn't found for 2 weeks after she went missing. Now, it was an abandoned house, but local kids played there a lot, and it was in a neighborhood where other people lived, and you would smell a decomposing body. So a lot of people, including our private investigator, believe that she wasn't actually killed there, but that it was a dumping site. Now, the case that was made for suicide is that she was committed to a mental health institution for 10 weeks on order of her doctor, who felt like she was suicidal and that she wasn't in a very good mental state. There's also a recording of a threatening phone call made to Cindy, and this is so strange. So it said, Cindy, dead meat soon. Now, a lot of people believe that this is a woman's voice trying to ex-husband received the same call. Now, a lot of people talk about the ex-husband, he was investigated, but he was 18 years older than she was, which means he would have been 62 years old. Now, my dad was a very active 62-year-old, so, well, he's still alive, but he's not, he was 62 so many years ago. He was very active when he was 62 years old, so I'm not saying that her ex-husband couldn't have done this, but I just don't see it. He was a psychiatrist, a well-known psychiatrist. I don't see him harassing her for 6 years and then killing her. He, by the way, said that he feels like she had split personality disorder, I think already when they were married, but he believes that she did this to herself, but that she would never willingly do this to herself because she loved her family. They went through hell with this, and he doesn't believe that she would willingly hurt her family in the way that she did. Now, another reasoning is that on all the accounts that she was attacked, there were no witnesses. And it always happened on days when either a friend or family member was coming around the house to visit her. So, did she know that they were always visiting? And did she then set up the attacks because she knew that she would be found and she could make a claim for being attacked? And also, why wait 6 years to kill her? All the attacks were extremely similar, including the last one, like the black nylon pantyhose around her neck was used in every single attack. Why not kill her sooner? Like, why wait so long? And in all the previous attacks, yeah, she was stabbed and she was scraped and stuff, but they were always very superficial wounds. They were never really deep wounds. So I don't know. It's a really, really strange case because in the 6 years that she claimed she was harassed and attacked, the police never found any proof of that. They never found witnesses. They never found evidence. They also had absolutely no inkling about who would have done this. There was nobody in her life that would have been obsessed with her enough to do this. Now, there was an interesting thing on one of the investigating police officers, and I'm going to read it because it was a post on Reddit from the guy's nephew, and he said, "My uncle was a suspect, and what a lot of the available reading on the case fails to mention is that years after Cindy turned up dead, my uncle, Pat McBride," now Pat McBride is the police officer who moved in with her for a month, "was stripped off his badge for what I was told were similar attacks or threats of attacks on other women." Now, you have to take everything that's posted on Reddit with a grain of salt because it is private people posting things, and Pat McBride is a very common name, including in law enforcement. I searched for it, but I was never able to find the correct Pat McBride that they were talking about. But it's not, so I couldn't find anything online about whether he was actually stripped off his badge and whether he was accused of other attacks, so I don't know if this is true. Some people said that the police, well, not actually the police, but that a lot of people believed that the ex-husband was in on it with the police officer and they were doing this together. But again, I don't believe that. I don't believe the ex-husband had anything to do with it. And the police officer, I couldn't find this anywhere, but I don't think he knew her before she reported the attacks. He started investigating them after she reported the harassment. He moved in with her for a month, and if they were going out, why would you harass someone while you're going out? Like, I can get that you do it from a broken heart, but not while you're actually dating the person. So I don't understand how this police officer would be involved, because because he didn't get involved in the investigation until after the harassment was reported. My gut tells me that she suffered from split personality and she did this herself. The few things I know about split personality is that very often you have a dominant one, and it wouldn't be the first case where the dominant one tries to get rid of the other one. And maybe, this is like, I'm not a psychologist, but maybe the dominant one was trying to kill the other one and eventually succeeded. But I find it so bizarre and so creepy to think that she could have done this to herself. There are people who said, well, how would she have tied her hands and feet behind her back? Other people have tried it and succeeded quite easily, but she was heavily drugged. She would have been, like, out of it. She could have, however, taken the drugs literally right before she did that, so that she still would have been cognitive. The only strange thing is then what happened to the syringe for the morphine, but I don't know. Like I said, there are arguments to be made for each side. Yes, she was found barefooted and her feet were clean. There was blood found on the outside of her car, and all her wallet and her possessions were found underneath the car, sort of like a struggle. But it was parked in the parking lot of a shopping center, and nobody saw her being taken or nobody saw her fighting. And then she has all these like weird occurrences that nobody saw happening. So I don't know. I'm really I'm leaning, like, as I said, my gut tells me that she did this herself, that she committed suicide, probably not willingly, just like not knowing she was doing it. But I have no reason to believe that. It's just my instinct based on what I've heard about this case. It's so bizarre. So bizarre, and I'd never heard of it. Apparently, she's quite well known in Canada, but I had never heard of it, and it was wild researching this case. So let me know what you guys think about it. I would love to hear your theories. And as always, if you